Coulter and Nolame watched as Wolfrun, Zaid, and their new companion Ro donned magical masks and jumped inside the pool of limitless tears, vanishing from sight as they sank. Deep down they sank into a vast expanse of unending ocean. Whichever direction they cast their gaze, only an impossible stretch of hazy blue greeted them. As the name suggested, wherever the pool of limitless tears had led them, the water was salty and teeming with aquatic life. So looking through your inventory, last thing, do you see anything that might be damaged by water?
Aside from just about everything?
Let's see.
Oh yeah, you all stink like fish. During their efforts to infiltrate the Temple of Elemental Evil, our heroes toppled a barrel of foul-smelling oil to light a great fire as a diversion. That fishy stench clung to them even now.
My rations and my tinderbox and torch will likely be rendered unusable from water.
Above all of you, immediately above your heads, there's like a glowing ring, kind of like a corona. It's about 2 meters in diameter. There's a momentary feeling of disorientation. You feel like there's either no up nor down, save for the fish around you and the mountains that surround you. Besides this kind of strange mountainous rocky area that you find yourselves in, you see no bottom to the ocean, no top. You also notice a stream of bubbles from below you.
Ro is going to attempt to hold her breath as long as possible, both because she doesn't fully trust this situation, and it's also a good test of her own constitution to just hold your breath. But she's looking down and pointing towards what seems to be some sort of standable area of stone.
Just then, Ro noticed the brilliant azure twinkle of a glowing gemstone far below them. It matched the radiance of the item the cultists had tossed in and called the Keystone. At the rocky floor of this sunken island was also the swaying figure of a human female, a trail of bubbles floating from her. Upon closer inspection, Rose saw that she was chained to an old metal grate.
Yeah, she's going to point down with a lot of fervor and hold her thumb up and then down and gesture to everyone like, should we go down there? Do you see this? But she's holding her breath.
Ro, you also notice that it's effortless to hold your breath.
Her shoulders kind of relax. Well, I guess it's tough for her shoulders to relax when she's suspended, but she feels more relaxed.
Wolfred notices that Ro seems to be relaxing, so he's not quite panicked at the moment, but he is looking down to see what she's pointing at exactly.
You see much of the same, though you see it clearer with your heightened senses. It is a woman in a fully clothed, you can't make out what exactly she's wearing, maybe a robe or a dress, and she's thrashing against the chains.
Ro would immediately attempt to swim down, even against her sense of self-preservation.
Wolfrun would follow.
Zaid, what you also notice is that while you guys are sinking, there seems to be entrances to these like strange like dolmens or mounds.
Ro is going to attempt to pull 50 feet of rope out of her pack and kind of sling it over her shoulder.
Alright, you now have rope. It feels a bit heavier in your hands, but not by too much.
Wolfrun just gives a thumbs up and starts swimming downward.
Ro follows. I'm going to swim down as fast and far as I can. My goal is to reach this woman before she dies.
Yeah, I'm not exactly moseying my way down there either.
Wolfrun, Ro, as we're swimming, is going to point down towards the woman. Ro's going to point at her own face and mime taking the mask of water breathing off and placing it kind of in an empty space in front of her while pointing at that woman.
Wolfrun shakes his head.
Ro contemplates this.
He just holds up a single finger and then continues to swim down.
Alright, Saeed, when you see the inside of this strange building, there does seem to be corridors. You see a shimmering of water taking form and shape, almost like one of those elementals. You also see two figures that have humanoid shapes. but they seem to have luminous forms. They're moving as if they're talking to each other, and they seem to be completely aloof and unaware that you're there. The figure made from the very elements around you does seem to regard you. The fish follows you. It seems intent on eating your shield. Wolfrun, you notice first the biggest shark you've ever seen in your entire life. Maybe the only one. Has you seen a shark before?
No.
Oh, God.
He knows, he's heard of such things, but he's more of a cave critter than a water critter.
It moves with amazing speed.
Oh,
it seems to be drawn to Zaid.
Well, Ro is blissfully unaware of this massive shark, so she's going to continue to swim downwards. Yeah, so I think she'll be able to reach the floor of this ocean or water space.
Okay, so you see this woman, and she is hanging dead man's float style, tied to these chains.
From this distance, am I able to confirm that she's dead?
Roll medicine. There's no indication that she couldn't be revived yet.
Okay.
There's also an anchor next to you, wrapped in a huge amount of rope. And you notice that there's some sort of claw-like mechanism keeping her chain connected to the grate.
And Ro is going to think about Wolfrun shaking his head and holding up his finger, so she's not going to go with her immediate plan.
Directly in front of where your character's facing to the west, there is a... what kind of fucking fish is that? It's a D&D fish. It's like a catfish shark thing. A fish alien to the world as you know it, the seas you've seen. And it's circling a, kind of like the Master Sword, covered in coral and barnacles and stuff.
Huh.
There's also some other cave entrances around you. There's that glowing crystal item. There's the woman. And there's your friends above you.
Ro's taken her action.
What about you, Wolfrun?
I'm going to continue to swim down.
Very well.
I reach out to Ro with my cap of water breathing and kind of motion for her to swim up and grab it and put it on the girl.
Ro will attempt to swim up and grab that from you.
Zai's definitely gonna dash as deep into the room as he can. Is he happening to go after the other fish?
He goes after you because the other fish are following you anyway. One of the fish tries to follow you and is stopped by... Well, it's unclear. For some reason, it stops swimming right over these golden ridges and is eaten immediately by this giant shark.
Phew.
A spray of smoky crimson appears, drawing the presence of other fish as well.
Yeah, Nolame is not regretting his choice at all. The longer the party passes in this watery realm, the more worried he gets, but the more assured he is that he made the right call.
Yeah. I should have written like a last will and given it to you before diving in.
Speaking of your demise, Saeed, you feel something metal poke against your chest plate and the disturbing figure of some sort of humanoid aquatic being. You have heard of no stories of any of these beings before.
Is it like attacking me or just trying to get my attention? Like, dude, you're in my house.
A bit more of the latter. It stopped you with its trident.
I'm kind of like going to cross my arms together like a few times and then point urgently at the exit. I'm hoping that it means something, and like I'm trying to be like, oh, there's something going on out there. You got to go check it out.
It looks beyond you. Its demeanor, its body language is unchanged. Meanwhile, Ro and Wolfram, what do you want to do?
Ro is waiting until Wolfrun reaches the ocean floor. She's kind of standing there expectantly and reaching out for the cap of water breathing.
Wolfrun hands it to her hastily.
She is going to rush over to the woman and assess her level of consciousness while placing the cap of water breathing on her.
You can tell easily that she is unconscious.
Okay. She's going to place the cap of water breathing on her and investigate this claw mechanism.
It's held fast to the grate, looks very heavy and strong.
Does Wolfrun see the sword hanging
Yes.
around? He's going to go check that out.
Wolfrun, as you turn to do this, you notice that the shark is closing in.
That's why I'm going for a sword. I begin looking for some sort of lever or any kind of keyhole.
It's unclear how you might get inside. Alright, Zaid. With his back against the wall, and facing down an alien figure whose humanoid shape seemed to be the very aquatic mirror of humanity, Zaid Azar steels himself for a battle with a titanic disadvantage. Although it seemed he was trespassing, Zaid had no choice but to thrust his rapier like a skewer to force an exit. Alright, you hit. Once you do hit him, he tries to leave.
As his fin wafts past me, I riposte with another swish of the rapier, which moves gracefully underwater.
Wounded and rebuked by a superior bladesman, the aquatic humanoid coiled and darted away in a flash of scales, throwing up brackish blood and bubbles that clouded his escape. It seemed for now that Zaid's assailant was content to flee deeper into his home to tend to his wounds. Right, you don't see him for now. Meanwhile, outside the cavernous enclosure, the massive hulk of the great white shark sinks into the rocky depression where Ro and Wolfrun had descended into. Okay, so Ro...
Oh boy.
It does one circle around both of you, and decides to go for the more lively target of Ro. It swoops in, trying to crush down its teeth in a life-ending bite.
As Ro is investigating this woman, she feels the pressure of the water change above her, glances up to see this massive creature that she's never seen before bearing down on her. Steady herself as its teeth dig in and does everything she can to maintain this kind of steady, magically assisted holding of her breath.
He was moving in a circular motion. He turns around and tries to take a bite out of the helpless victim.
Ro uses interception, and as this shark is attempting to bite this helpless woman, she shoves her sword into the mouth of the shark, not as an attack, but in a blocking fashion, to reduce the damage the target takes by 1d10 plus 2.
If not for your efforts, you know, by the force and speed and size of the attack, this woman would have surely died. You saved her life.
Excellent.
She did get a bite out of her, but it ended up being a graze. Is there anything else you want to do?
So yeah, on my turn, I would like to pull back my sword from the mouth of the shark and then drive the tip in, attempting to make 2 attacks and stab in.
Did you just roll 2 22s?
Yes, I did.
That is badass. The shark, instead of going for another full circle like this, I don't know if you can see that, he suddenly jerks. Instead of going east, he goes over here again to build up momentum for another strike.
Alright, Ro is going to use the rest of her turn to chase after the shark and attempt to draw its attention towards her.
Where on the shark did you attack?
Since it's an attack of opportunity, she's going to slash towards the lower vertical fin at the end of its tail.
Alright, you hack it off easily.
Ooh.
It starts to wiggle. Its rapid movements send out a spray of blood. Wolfrun, it's your turn.
Okay, Wolfrun looks back at the sword behind the grate one time, and then faces towards the shark, pulls both hatchets from his waist, and starts to swim towards its belly. I take a swing at its stomach as it's thrashing around, and it looks like I lodged a good one right in there.
That you did. Right mid-side.
1 axe lodged into the belly of the beast. It's jerking and writhing in the water too quick, and I missed with my other hand.
Is there anything else you wish to do in your turn?
Actually, I am going to dislodge the other axe from its stomach.
Where is Zaid? Is there anything you want to do in here?
I mean, if there were literally treasure chests here, I might pry open a couple.
Is that what you choose to do?
I would probably check at least one.
Most of the items that you find within the treasure chest that does not have a lock has alien objects inside. What you do recognize is kind of a strange starfish that is long since dead. An old boot that seems to be holding something. It's like a coin purse or something like that. Plants that you don't recognize stacked in a pile, like seaweed or something. You also see some sort of jar with things that look like worms or spaghetti inside. You see a shield as well in a strange design you've never seen before. You see splinters of wood, and you see a lapis lazuli amulet.
All right, can I grab the amulet, starfish, boot, coin purse, and the shield and put the new shield like kind of around my back?
Very well.
And I will now try to trudge out. Heading out of the room. I won't test my luck by rummaging more.
So the shark coils around in pain and then violently attacks at Wolfrun, turning around, biting at his midsection. Like so.
Well, that's not polite.
Does Infinity hit?
Yes. So it's attempted to bite into me, but I moved back slightly enough for it to just barely make its way through my armor.
Well, you definitely have earned its attention, and it tries for another bite. Luckily, your move saved your life. You hear a powerful clack as its jaws snap together. Okay, Ro, it's your turn.
All right. Ro is going to swim up and towards the gills and take 2 swipes with her long sword, two-handed. First attack, she swipes horizontally across the gills, clearly missing, and taking a mental note that perhaps she should expand her weapons in the future. Her immediate goal is to protect the people around her, though, and even if she's missing attacks, she's more than willing to use her body as a distraction until this enemy is dealt with. So she is going to stay as close to the head of this shark as possible in hopes that she can draw its attention. She starts waving her arms around, trying to make herself a flailing target.
Could you describe the source of her resilience, just given the situation?
Yes, so Ro thinks about the time that she just spent imprisoned and her confusion and anger around that, and these individuals who have sprung into the dungeon and freed her, and they seem to have such a strong bond, and she wouldn't be able to deal with the guilt knowing that these people who have saved her, if one of them were to die in this situation, she needs to do everything possible to allow them to continue in their journey as companions, and her own life was nearly forfeit anyways, merely hours ago. So at this point, she needs to continue to be as selfless as possible.
Wolfrun, it would seem that she has successfully gained the shark's attention. Is there any last thing you wish to do on your turn?
So I have a good look at his eye now. I'm going to attempt to lodge my battle axe into his eye.
I like it. I like it. Your battle axe sinks deeply into its cornea. All the while this was happening, Zaid emerged from the watery cavern just as soon as the coast was clear. Shocked to see his companions fighting off the shark, he swam as quickly as he could to catch up with them before it was too late. As he did so, large fish followed him, drawn by the oily scent that clung to his shield. Do you press your advantage?
I gestured a row to aim for the other eye.
Which means it's the great white shark's turn. The shark may have been larger and faster than all 3 heroes combined, but it had only survived this long in the endless ocean of the plane of water by picking its battles carefully. Now that its prey had put up a fight that risked further injury, it elected to attempt an escape before things got out of hand, provoking an attack of opportunity from both of the assailants in front of it.
I mean, if it's swimming away, I'm not really seeing any reason to.
Alright, so the shark indeed does flee, and it even ignores Zaid on his way down.
Ro swims over to Wolfrun and just kind of looks him over. You have any glaring wounds, or what kind of state you're in?
Wolfrun barely has any injuries, just a little piercing around the abdomen. There might be a thin trail of blood coming from his midsection in the water.
Zaid is Just kind of looking about, making sure there's no more giant creatures floating his way. He's in his own mind, constantly praising Rune for keeping him as safe as he's been for the moment. That creature rushing up by him, no doubt warded off by his fellows, sending images of his life flashing before him. But now his focus returned to both the luminous object below and the trapped woman.
So given the situation, what do you wish to do now?
Ro would like to swim down to this woman and attempt some form of resuscitation, keeping in mind that what she doesn't want to have happen is this woman take in a massive gulp of water. So with that in mind, Ro wants to assess whether she's stable and unconscious, and if she is, she wants to keep her unconscious. She doesn't want her to snap back into consciousness underwater.
So are you touching her at all?
Yes, I put my hand on her chest to see if there's any rising or falling, and touch her neck to see if there's a pulse.
She is unconscious and alive still.
I hold a thumbs up to the others.
Zaid, you also see a half of a gold sphere with 2 blue crystals poking out of it, to the east of this victim who's chained to the grate.
I'll swim down there and take a look at it.
Ro has a childlike sense of curiosity and a dangerous lack of self-preservation, so generally if there's a shiny object, she wants to dive headfirst into investigating it. However, being underwater, having failed so many swipes with her blade, and so she's going to just try and focus her mind on one thing right now, and that's saving this woman.
Yeah, no idea what that even is.
It looks like perhaps something a gnome would make. Some sort of advanced mechanism.
Ro has an idea. She wants to assess whether she can tie something to the anchor, preferably a chain, and maybe drag the anchor somewhere that it can be thrown over and descend, and potentially pull the entire grate if she attaches the other end of the chain to the grate. But looking around, she doesn't immediately see a place where she could throw the anchor, drag it, and throw it. How does the grate look? Is it rusted, kind of crusted from being underwater?
It's completely covered with barnacles. Quickly searching for useful tools in her pack, Ro had discovered that she remembered to pack a crowbar with her before she set off on her wayward journey. She hastily equipped it to deal with the grate.
Ro goes to this corner here and begins to leverage for a pull and gestures to Wolfran to come help aid her in pulling this crowbar to see if she can break the grate.
Wolfran obliges.
At first, nothing seems to have happened. It seems stuck fast, until you feel a click, and then it gives way with a sudden groan and a rise of bubbles. You do unfasten the grate at the corner you're standing at.
Are we able to swim down? Does it look, is there an opening that we've made wide enough for that?
I believe it's like a foot deep until you hit the floor.
Okay. She's going to move over to these grates here where the claw is fastened into and attempt to do the same.
This one took considerably more effort without the help of Wolfran, but eventually you got it.
Excellent.
I swim over to see if I can help at all.
So eventually you do separate claw from the grate, but it is still latched to her ankle.
The only solution is to cut off her ankle.
I concur. You see that there does seem to be a locking mechanism on it.
I attempt to pick the lock, moving slowly, less dexterous with my fingers underwater.
Can she do it?
Ugh. It's not Rose Day. She's still recovering from imprisonment. Quite exhausted.
You could leave her behind. You could leave the keystone behind. You could live here.
So she's going to tie one end of the rope around her waist and over her shoulders, and the other end to the woman, around that woman's waist, and point to the others, gesture at herself, and then up. Unfortunately, she can't speak, so there's no more information she can give them, but she's going to attempt to swim up and carry the woman on this rope.
Do either of you choose to help her?
I do.
Can Zaid grab the keystone and help at the same time?
Yeah, I don't know
my
you said that because
God.
I was like, oh yeah, we should probably do something
I
about
was
that.
biting my tongue so hard. Oh my god.
I was hoping somebody was going to investigate it soon. I just knew Ro was too scared.
As soon as you touch the keystone, another one of those strange lights appears before you.
Ooh. Rose sticks an end of her longsword, just the tip, through the corona. See what happens. Oh, this was a dumb idea. What if it explodes? But she does it.
Sword vanishes.
Alright, that confirms her beliefs. She holds the woman close. Ro dives in with the woman.
And it was just in time, because on the ridge of the bowl-like rocky depression, a cohort of the same aquatic humanoids, now armed to the teeth, seemed to be preparing to confront the three heroes and their unconscious rescue. As soon as Ro and the mysterious woman vanished into the portal, Zaid and Wolfron were soon to follow. The next thing they knew, they were back on the material plane, and in the same room they left.
As we were waiting for folks to return, first he pulled out his pipe and packed it full of tobacco as he was reading through his notes, and then realized he had a second pipe that he had gotten off of the loot they found. So, without saying anything, he packs one and then gestures to Coulter to see if he was interested in a pipe of tobacco.
Coulter, once he notices, he sort of waves it away. Thank you.
After that, Nolame would have just, not really made any sort of impolite gesture, just sets the pipe down on the table and continues smoking and reading through the journal that he had acquired. And then after a while, he starts thinking how folks are going to be cold and wet whenever they get out. So in the time they were gone, he just took a little bit of time to find any sort of rags or things that could be used to dry people off when they get back. And then as the time progresses, he goes into the stores that are in this room and puts together a little makeshift cooking area and starts cooking just a very basic soup. Just very basic vegetable soup with what is on hand, just to give folks something hot whenever they get out. So that's where they find Nolame is standing over the soup pot.
So Nolame, you found a perfectly preserved cache of food and supplies. You find provisions for 3 days. Did I mention anything about the journal last time?
Just that it was there.
While looting the belongings of the cultists after the battle, Nolame had discovered a journal which contained personal entries, as well as letters from members of the temple in other corridors. In one entry, the author wrote about his increasing concerns regarding the brewing enmity between the different sects in the temple. One letter appeared to be from a prominent member of the Red Corridor, who urged the recipient to join with their sect before it was too late. He doesn't know why that the Dark Corridor, he doesn't know what they're doing in the sacred temple. And he says it's only a matter of time. It is not signed. There's an entry about the fountains acting up, and it describes in brief detail as he was assigned to fix them that they drew in lake water from the lake, and something about successfully fixing the water issue. He fixed it by diverting the water elsewhere.
Ro is emptying out her pack and attempting to dry things off and pour any water that's seeped into her mess kit and stuff like that.
Everyone here except for Ro is exhausted now. Nolame and Coulter, you hear a splash, which announces the arrival of something in the pit.
Without looking, because even if it's something that's not his friends, he'd still want to appear hospitable. Nolame grabs a blanket and ladles out a bowl of soup and turns around to see who's emerged. As he sees that it's Ro, he approaches her with a smile, the blanket and the bowl of soup.
I close my eyes and shake my head slowly and say, "You're very lucky you didn't come down there."
Nolame has a wry smile and says, "Growing up on an island has taught me that if you can't see whether there's sharks in the water, you might not want to go into the water." And then he looks over to the unconscious figure next to Ro and then indicates that there's a cleared off table that Nolame had set up just in case someone came back hurt or unconscious.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. Ro would attempt to carefully lay the woman on the table.
Wolfrun pulls up his mask and he says, "It wasn't that bad."
Nolame looks Wolfrun up and down as he's returned to get a second bowl of soup, and as he hands it to him, he says, "How bad is not that bad?
We're alive, aren't we?
I suppose it wasn't that bad after all."
Zaid shivers and shakes and tries to kind of start to get the water wrung out from his tabard, lets out a long, exasperated sigh. I never thought I would shiver at the sight of fish.
Calder, is there anything you can do to help this woman? She's stable, but she's unconscious. I don't know what her last moments were like before she fell under, but she might wake up a little hostile.
I look
We
over.
found her chained to the bottom near a grate.
What I saw was you all suddenly decide to dive into this pool here. You vanished for a while, and I sort of asked where they went.
Ro, Wolfrun, and Zaid gladly described their adventure in the elemental plane of water. How Zaid saw luminous beings and aquatic humanoids. How a massive shark almost made a meal out of them, only to be fought off. How a would-be sacrifice was rescued just in time. And how the mysterious keystone was safely retrieved. While they described the experience to the best of their ability, none of the three were certain as to where it was they had returned from.
Would Nolame, thanks to his religion training, understand where they went based on those descriptions?
The closest religious lore Nolame has heard about in this region concerning watery worlds is a legend the barbarians of Arnos tell of sacred lakes and ponds. It is said, to swim through them will bring the worthy through the realm of spirits to a mysterious other world. While there were some similarities, it didn't quite fit the description. Calder, sounds like the fucking plane of water.
Yeah, Coulter's nodding, and this was my number one theory. Coulter has specific training in Arcana and religion. Inside, he's very excited at the prospects of witnessing everything that's transpiring. I do believe you traverse momentarily into a realm where there is naught but water.
If that's true, then I'm certainly glad we made it out. It is not a place for a warrior of the blade.
And in no small thanks to this object. And Zaid holds up the keystone. Perhaps it could become of use in future if we were to ever either come across some other entrance like this.
Zaid, when you lift it up, your thumb grazes over one of the crystals, and you hear ethereal sound from within the well and a splash.
I whirl around and look back.
The shimmer is gone.
Ooh. Looks like I've found the means to activate and deactivate it. For the moment, can Zaid take a look at the shield? Trying to inspect it a little bit further.
You can. Let me read my notes on it. Like the other artifacts you found, this one is not covered in barnacles, inlaid with a pale red in swirling motions. No symbols exactly, but it's a very fine make and very light as well.
I shall certainly need to get this identified for its true properties.
While Nolame was reading the message in the journal, he also noticed details about some sort of magician who called the Red Corridor home, and several remarks concerning a fire gate.
Nolame conveys this to the rest of the party, while somewhat apprehensively saying, "If you all went through a water door to a water place, I can only imagine where this fire door may lead."
As we were discussing those things, I was just thinking, what about this woman that they brought over? A bit concerned. So when the discussion turns to that, I'll be like, I don't know what I can do for this woman that you have brought in, but I am curious as to her identity.
That's a good point. We should be wary of whoever she is if we can bring her back to consciousness, but also we don't want to appear hostile, so Ro sheathes her sword.
Zaid approaches the body and sheathes his weapons and places down any unnecessary equipment. Holds out his hands above her and motions up her body and towards her face as if trying to guide the water out from her, and beseeches Rune, bring the breath back to this one whom it has been taken. Let your light fill her lungs and bring back her spirit.
She coughs and retches, She props herself up on her elbows, blinking her eyes open as she sits up and says, "Cab fooled me." It sounded like a question.
Do I recognize it as Elvish?
No.
Is it a language I would recognize?
I cast comprehend languages.
That spell.
If it's not Elvish, the other relevant languages I have might be Celestial, High Runarch, or like Base Orcish.
It's not Goblin, is it?
No. I think only Margarash
joke.
could understand her, unfortunately. But Coulter understands her. He ascertains magically the meaning of "where am I?"
Ro offers her a bowl of soup.
Everyone here can recognize, oh, that sounds like Arnosh. Arnosh is the language of the people of Arnos. She takes the bowl of soup. There's a glint of recognition in Coulter's eyes. He steps over and says, "Gorev Mahagat."
I bow and speak in common. I don't know if you can understand me, but you're safe here.
I'll translate if I can, but I think I can only perceive. I don't think I can actually, translate.
So I've kind of thought deeply about this, and I'm going to give her a rudimentary knowledge of common, just like the basic. So she recognizes some words. She kind of thinks about what you just said, and then nods uncertainly.
So Coulter's translating what she's saying to the party, just to be clear.
Probably safe to very first try to communicate that it's not safe outside of this room to her.
Do you have a name? And Ro holds a hand over her own chest and says, "Ro."
When she finally understands that Ro is trying to introduce herself, Saith puts her hand over her heart and says, "Saith." Although she was wide-eyed and distracted by Zaid, it was clear to all that this must have been the first time that she had ever seen a Sacriai face to face.
Nolame is making his way towards the door. As he does, since he's walking behind her, does he notice anything else that sticks out to her that might resonate with the time that he's spent in either Runia or Southern Arnos?
She is wearing the local fashion. She's from the Goriseta Peninsula somewhere, and on one of those big buttons that clasps her dress closed, you see the symbol of a dagger over water. Nolame, you recognize this as one of the houses from Illithron.
Nolame continues to make his way to the door and just says to everyone, "While we get things squared away here, I'll make sure that there's no other members of the corridor coming down the corridor. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to use the information for, but I'm just glad to have it." So I'll actually probably be pondering that as I make my way. Most of the torches are supposed, or did someone relight them? I know almost all of them were extinguished out here.
I would have had some candles up, at least in my small area. And I remember we gathered some candles, so while they were in the water, there would be some illumination on the alchemical table where Coulter sorted the tomes and was attempting to examine everything we've been finding.
Party members, you just saw Nolame leave the room. Saith is walking towards the food and eating the party share. Everyone here besides Ro is exhausted.
I also walk towards the food and start eating.
Here's Nolame's plan. He remembered there was a lock by the door we trapped, so he was going to go there with his thieves' tools, try and pick it, and then go put it on the other door that leads into this section of the temple. So this is just things that, if you're fine with it just happening in the background, This is just what he would be doing to eat the clock. Nolame's just coming back in and would relay to everyone that the main hall that we came in still seems clear. There doesn't seem to be any sign that other corridor members have been through. I locked the door that we originally came from, so there's only one entrance into this section of the temple now, and we have a bear trap behind one of the double set of doors. So we should hear anyone coming in thanks to the screaming. As far as a long rest, Nolame would be in favor of that, but Nolame also, hasn't been overly concerned with if any of these cultists escape. Before, there's still 2 cultists shoved in that back room where we found all that treasure. I don't know if a long rest or any sort of rest would potentially allow these folks to escape. Have we been here long enough to where we would reasonably assume that someone has somehow made it out of the temple?
It is the end of the day.
I guess Nolame poses it to the rest of the party then and says, "So it's clear that this has been quite a draining day, and there's more to be discovered here. the question now is, are we still concerned with those who were within the temple getting out and somehow escaping us or reporting that something's going on here? Or have we pretty much accepted the fact that either that's not going to happen or it's already happened? Because that would likely determine whether we have time to rest or whether we have to press on immediately before the opportunity to keep all the rats in this cage escapes us.
You see Ro is by some rubble, kind of kneeling by it. She has both of her swords out and a couple daggers and hand axes. She's cleaning the weapons and getting all the salt water off and applying some sort of blade oil to protect the steel. And she nods while listening to you. She says, unfortunately, as exhausted as I am and would love to rest, I think we have to assume that if anyone got out, the longer we stay here, we might be sitting targets for a much larger force.
This is just a general commentary right now. This is going to be kind of interesting because the only reason Nola May, like this semi-roguish character Nola May, has been attached to members of this party is because they were there whenever he got everyone in trouble with that duel. He wasn't there whenever Ro was helping members of the party fight, so Nola May notes with interest how it was the new person who offered commentary first. Not in like a judgmental way, just more like an analytical way of, there must have been something very profound that happened on the other side of that portal for this person to feel so comfortable in the group as to speak first.
I know that's your internal thoughts.
Yeah.
But Ro is having internal thoughts of her own that prompted her to speak up. As she listens to the more arcane amongst you discuss things that are clearly above her head, and feeling a bit defeated by her poor performance underwater, she wanted to jump at the single opportunity she saw to actually be of use with some tactical knowledge, something that she does feel she excels at. So she took that opportunity to hopefully show her worth to the group.
Anyway, externally, he looks at Ro and smiles and says, this does seem to be a very tactical way of viewing the situation. And then he looks at Zaid, because Zaid seemed to be the one that was most concerned about getting this done promptly. And then I asked, would you agree with this?
I think the longer we dally here, we are indeed at greater risk than I would like. We should, however, at the very least inform this individual that they ought not open the way that leads to the other prisoners, as well as perhaps send them in the direction to the exit, maybe. Though who knows if they'd be able to fend for themselves on the outside.
Ro walks over to Zaid and tries to casually whisper to him and asks, do you think we can trust this woman, at least with a dagger? I could give her one of mine.
I don't see why not. She is indebted to us, after all.
Ro walks over to the table and slowly, politely sets a dagger, one of her two daggers, on the table and says, for you, for your safety.
The woman takes the dagger and looks at her reflection in it, then combs her hair to the side. She looks over at Wolfrun and gives him a nod, as if to say, yeah, I can take care of myself. Trying to impress Wolfrun a little bit.
Wolfrun smirks.
So does Ro.
And then she eats the apple from the pig's mouth. Also, Nola May is a 5-star chef.
We noticed.
He's like one of the luau. I invented it.
So I know you were probably joking there, Boar, but I'm kind of on board with the idea of Nola May actually being a fairly decent cook.
Make it so.
I will go ahead and make it so.
He's got the years behind him.
That's what I was going to say. He's got the years and like enough different experiences where he's like, oh yes, I know that if you go ahead and combine things in these flavors, it actually comes out really well.
Okay, do you guys want a long rest or not?
Yeah, that's probably a really good idea.
So the reason Nola May's been asking this is as he's been up here cooking, he's been obviously pondering, all right, so I've been thinking about this and I was actually hoping that we would take a long rest. So Nola May is actually a little bit distraught that this has been going the exact opposite way that he's been wanting.
Wolfrun's actually pulling his bedding out of his bag.
Nola May, with a somewhat like desperate sort of look in his eye that now as he's turning to Wolfrun, only Wolfrun would be able to see the expression on his face. And Nola May's like, what are your thoughts on this, Wolfrun?
Who wants first watch?
It would probably be either Coulter or I, since neither one of us decided to go ahead and go for a nice little swim in the ocean.
I believe I would take first, as I would finish up my examinations and ruminations.
Okay.
Wolfrun kind of turns to everyone and is like, we need rest or we're going to die.
And I'm gonna see if I can detect any thoughts of her and if I can actually understand them while I have comprehended languages.
You see a flood of rapid images like a slideshow on fast forward. People you've never seen before, people in armor is completely foreign and alien to you. You get meaning then after these pictures. She's wondering where she is. She's wondering who these people are. There's a lot of, what the fuck is this bird man? What's going on, but she wants to get home so very badly. She's replaying the trauma of drowning in her mind over and over again.
Yeah, so I successfully cast that spell, and anybody who happens to witness Coulter, his eyes just glass over as they do when he's being struck with these visions.
And you can see through her eyes the plane of water.
Staring into the realms of Rune, are we?
Once I snap out and I look to Zaid, I explain that I have received a vision from Runa himself, the great god, and I describe that. Runa has given me vision of the red corridor and the blue, and their actions, their foul mockery of the true religion.
Is there anything else you guys want to do before you rest?
Ro is in the corner. Internally, she acknowledges that she's an outsider, and she thinks it's respectful to kind of walk away from them, give them space and privacy so that if they need to discuss what they think of her, they have the ability to do so in private. So that's why she's been kind of hanging up her gear over here. You see her pull her leather armor away from where it was near the flame, and she's oiling the armor to give it more waterproofing and protection. And just generally tending to her gear and drying her boots.
Ro, you can hear everything.
Yeah, and she's definitely listening, so she wants to be respectful, but she still does need to learn about them, so she has been listening.
Before he lies down finally, Wolfram peels up his hide armor to examine his wounds slightly and kind of shrugs, pulls them back down, moves closer to the fire.
It's the first long rest since the inn.
We've been fucking going.
It's been a long 2 days. On Coulter's watch, nothing happens. Ro, your mind is busy. A lot of things have happened to you recently, and it's hard to concentrate on faraway noises or anything like that.
She'd be wandering, slowly kind of pacing. She's got her long sword out and just softly practicing some swipes and follow-up moves and sort of martial dancing.
Nolame's watch is peaceful.
Remember in that side adventure how I said I was going to put that little, example scroll? Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and put that together. I can write down a little bit of what I was thinking about would be in it, but I want to put that together.
Perfect use of your watch time, especially one so peaceful. Maybe this was the last group of people. Maybe the job's already done. Wolfrun, in the middle of the night, you hear voices. It must have been a congregation or something moving all the way across the dungeon. It was brief, but it sounded like a group of people moving from one hallway to another. After a few minutes, it was gone.
Can I roll perception to see if I could make out anything that they were saying?
Sure. These words stick out to you. Avendrad, sacrifice, method, flood, fire, soon, tomorrow, noon. You also hear something about the beholder. There's a lot of whens and whys. It's like this is deep into the dungeon, so you've really trained your senses to pick up on the smallest sounds, like the flutterings of the owl that's been watching you the entire night.
Can I use primeval awareness to see if there's any nearby aberrations, celestials, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead?
There is fiendish energy deep inside of this dungeon. There's a whole bunch of undead walking around. And that's mostly it.
Okay. I'm gonna put a bolt in my crossbow just in case. If I stay awake after this watch, does that interfere with my long rest?
Yep, it would make it a short rest.
I think that's what I'm gonna do.
Zaid, you see Wolfrun choose to stay awake after he wakes you.
Don't trust my eyes, Wolfrun?
It's not that.
Very well. I'll make use of the company.
I know nothing happened as far as occurrences, but I know Zaid requested an identify, so...
You identified as a genuine Triton shield.
Okay.
It is the next morning.
Nolame, once he gets up, would use his prestidigitation to, light at least one fire. If there's still soup in the kettle, he would warm that up. It says I can cast it multiple times. So, at least one main light source, heat up soup, and light my pipe. It's morning smoke time.
Now that everyone's up, Wolfrun says in a low voice, there isn't much time.
Same strategy as last time, where we dress some of us up, or at this point, should we just try and move in the open effectively? I don't know how well disguises would work at this point.
I don't know if subtlety is our best strategy any longer.
Well, we do have another able combatant with us.
We have to find this beholder.
Beholder. Do we know what that is?
Would I have recognized that from any of my studies, Boar?
The Beholder was the name that Jorah Greencloud used to describe the leader of this outfit.
Wolfrun's going to say it depends upon whether it is a beholder or if it's someone named Beholder.
Let's assume that it is a beholder. What does that entail?
It's a ball with a bunch of eyes.
Well, that doesn't sound so terrifying.
Oh, it is. He kind of scrunches his face. They're not quite from this world.
What do you mean they're not from this world?
They don't belong here. Their existence is a corruption.
Ro nods her head and says, "Yes, that sounds accurate."
They're not really cooperative either, so it seems odd they'd be a leader of a group of anything.
So where do they come from if they're not from here? If they're not from here, then we need to understand as much as we can about whatever this thing is, so that at least whenever we find it, we have a plan of action in mind.
I have no idea where they're from, I just know they don't belong here, and I know if I see one, to kill it.
You can tell that Nolame is getting very uncomfortable, as he always does whenever the situation seems serious.
Let's put it this way, there are species of animals that, while they are dangerous, they are necessary to the balance of nature. Yes?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
If every single beholder in this plane of existence were wiped out, it would be a good thing.
Can they be stabbed?
They can, but not with a normal blade.
Can they speak?
Oh yes, they're very intelligent, very devious.
So they don't just immediately kill on sight then?
Oh no, they will.
Every time?
Look, I've encountered one in my life, and I barely made it out alive, and I did not kill it.
When you say not normal blade, what do you mean? Sharp blade?
No. It must be some kind of enchanted blade.
I don't believe I've ever heard of such a thing.
Oh, blessed by the gods or imbued with some kind of magic.
Interesting. Is that something, Coulter, you could do to my blades?
Coulter smirks and nods to Ro. If I could do that, I most likely would not be here. Perhaps I can look into it.
Thank you.
This does not bode well.
Saith looks uncomfortable, anxious to leave.
Well, we'll need to be thinking of this while we continue onward, but before we reach the bottom of this place, I'm sure we'll want to have some plan of action in mind for whenever we inevitably come into contact with this beholder, and hopefully it's just the name of the leader of this cult, not something worse.
Coulter, I imagine you would be invaluable in such an encounter with your strange ways, your magics. I pledge my blade to at least keep you safe, even if I cannot harm the creature with my swords.
Thank you most kindly for your offer. I would need all the protection I can get.
Speaking of, if we come face to face with this thing, which we likely will, Coulter, we need to keep you safe.
I would say let us keep us all safe and avoid this being for now.
But what of the girl? The Arnosi woman?
Whatever. She's coming with us, isn't she?
Very well.
We can't leave her here.
Are we going to usher her out the entrance or just bring her along?
No, she might be valuable. She's of a noble house. We may want to keep her close.
I think it's only right we at least leave the decision up to her.
She looked like she wanted to fight to me.
Her confidence was admirable, but the way she handles a blade leaves a lot to be desired.
Well, maybe she should stick with you then. Maybe she'll learn something.
Well, I don't have any objections to that.
You seem like you could use a squire.
All right, Wolfrun, where do you lead your intrepid adventurers?
Well, the only way out is through.
Ro takes one last glance at the cage, slowly shakes her head, and leaves the room.
I mutter a blessing to Sylvanas when I pass Agilus's corpse.
It's starting to smell bad.
Oh no.
He smelled bad to begin with.
Saith stops to regard the corpse of Agilus Keghammer,
Oh.
and she starts rifling through his belongings.
No.
She backs away, and she looks like, what? What?
No.
All right, ready yourselves. We don't know what lies beyond this door.
Zaid will assert himself up by Wolfrun, so he's not taking the brunt of whatever comes.
Ro pulls out her long bow and has an arrow at the ready.
I spent some time practicing with the lock that I put on this, so it only takes a moment for me to pick it open, now that I know it.
Wolfrun shoulders his crossbow.
Do you open the door?
Yes, I do.
The doors swing open to silence. The light is much dimmer in this room. The candles were expensive and tall. Now they were burning down to the last wick. It is unclear if anyone has been in the room since the attack.
Good. Room's clear.
Was there anything in this room that we didn't notice last time, Boar? Like, did we pick up everything of note?
We want to check the corpse of the red corridor cultists and see if they have anything that might protect one from flame if we need to traverse into their domain.
Great idea.
That is good.
Saith lingers back with Ro.
Ro still has her bow out, just taking a couple minutes to keep an eye on the corridor from whence we came, just in case.
You see a similar ring that it's not the exact style, but it's similar to the one that Coulter picked up from the cold corridor. His robes look very fine as well.
I pry it off his hand and show it to Coulter.
You also find 5 gold in his shoe.
Eh?
Ew. I also pocket the 5 gold.
Wolfrun, you know that Arnosi people tend to sew gold and jewelry into their clothing.
That's honestly smart. I bring the ring over to Coulter and show it to him and say, do you think this would have any magical properties?
See, quite possible. Let's take a look.
It looks made of brass or maybe gold.
My eyes can't perceive if they're eldritch or enchanted unless I perform the ritual.
I don't think we have time for that, no.
Saith randomly wanders up to one of the doors and reaches out to try to open it.
Wolfrun puts a hand on her shoulder.
She says, Cad, I stay I could...
Danger.
She backs away, looking scorned, and starts to pout.
Maybe she knows where she's going, though. Nolame, can you check that door for traps, perhaps?
Yes. If I don't find any, are we going to commit to one way, or do we want to split up and try and see which pathway we want to favor? Do I notice any traps or anything, Boar?
Seems clear.
I don't
We're
think
good.
splitting up is a good tactical decision right now.
Whichever way we pick, I could lock the other door to make sure it at least slows people down behind us.
This door has one of those mirrors next to it.
I put the ring on. Coulter slips the ring on his finger.
You feel a magical energy about you.
I try to assess its properties now that I'm wearing it. I have a suspicion, and I'm okay if I'm wrong. Coulter, well, see, is this torch here lit and there's candles?
Yep.
Coulter, while wearing the ring, I reach out and put my hand in the fire.
Your hand burns, fire bad.
Yeah!
Nolame would look at Wolfrun and say, I know you say we shouldn't split up, but if we pick the wrong door, this is going to take twice as long. But we could have the majority of us take the most likely way, and just have me and, say, Ro pull the same sort of trick that we pulled earlier. I'll put on the red corridor disguise, pretend like she's my prisoner, and we'll scout the way. If it seems like there's a large number of people, we'll come to you. If we don't see anything, we'll come and back you up.
Maybe we should wait until we have someone at least one room or hallway in, rather than just going both ways at the same time.
Yeah, my
That's
problem
fair.
with the plan is how would you get back to us?
That's fair.
Nolame,
Yeah.
do you see this parchment and ink, quill? I wonder if you could craft a message pretending that we are amongst them to mislead them should they come through here.
I could craft something along those lines. They would probably be pretty eager to go ahead and check out the blue corridor area. They could just end up being occupied there for almost an entire day. I'll go ahead and just take a quick moment to write that down. If that even buys us an hour, then it was worth the minutes spent. I just drop it on the edge of the table. Ooh, and for dramatic impact, I take out one of the extra daggers that I have and I just pin it to the table.
Wolfrun, do you try to open that door? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's where I'm headed.
The corridor before you is completely bare.
Looking over his shoulder, am I able to perceive anything? It is a stone corridor.
You see constellations drawn on either side in murals and scuff marks every so often.
Never mind, guys. It appears to be some kind of closet.
Well, if I don't notice anything else, I will go down and investigate the door because it does not seem to be a red corridor door.
So you feel the weight of your right foot as it steps forward to press something, and then you hear a click. From the mechanics expertly hidden into the seams in the walls, a razor-sharp metal scythe swings out like from Indiana Jones, narrowly missing you.
Nolame stumbles backwards and goes, "God damn it, this is why I normally don't let myself go first. Who wants to go next down the hallway?"
You were doing really well.
Oh, yes. All right, and then now I'm going just creeping along, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Holy crap. Do you need an illumination?
The room is dark,
He's an elf.
dim to your eyes.
Yeah, but that's infravision. That's not the same as having a light.
I take out my lantern and light it, and then make sure that there's no tripwire or pressure plate before I go a little bit farther along, and then take a look again.
Roll nature. Stars painted on walls. Pretty.
I mutter to myself, saying, if only we had one of those wooded elves around here. The most art that they appreciate are the patterns of the seasons and the stars. He's letting his high elf arrogance kind of shine through.
In the back of her mind, Ro is actually thinking about the different trials and tribulations that her master at the warrior monastery would put her through for training, like obstacle courses with traps and gauntlets that she would have to run. And she's fighting the urge to charge down this as fast as possible just to test her reflexes. She kind of wants to.
Wolfrun, you notice that Arcturus' star is right above where the trap came out, and the night sky repeats over and over again.
Okay. I'm going to catch up with him, avoiding Arcturus' star, or at least gravitating towards the middle of the room when that appears. And I point to the walls and I say, you see that star there that repeats?
Yes.
That's what we have to be aware of.
Nolame looks ahead and tries to see if there are any more of those particular stars repeated ahead.
Have you found the key?
I believe so, but we've yet to test my theory, I suppose.
Nolame indicates to Wolfrun where he saw ahead the 3 other times where the stars repeated.
Wolfrun moves forward towards it, staying in the middle of the room. Once he gets to the spot, just tell me where to stop.
Stop!
He motions with one of his battle axes in front of the star.
Nolame, you know that it was a pressure plate that activated it.
Does anything about that space look different than the others?
On the opposite wall, there are scuff marks.
Behind us, were the scuff marks on the side that had the blades or on the opposite side?
On the opposite side.
I indicate to Wolfrun that the other side seems to have the scuff marks, and then I tell him that previously it seems like the scuff marks were on the opposite side of the hallway as the triggering plate. I really don't want to test that by stepping on it. Do we have anything heavy enough that might be able to trigger that?
Step on what? What are you trying to trigger?
There's a pressure plate somewhere right in front of me that's going to bring down a scythe. Do you see the marks on the wall?
Yes.
We believe it to be opposite of that.
From the general construction of the room, it seems like the person who built this place was an asshole, though. So there might be some sort of extra hidden thing here that we're not aware of. He keeps stepping back until Ro is well ahead of him.
Ro, the floor is yours, literally.
All right. She just starts hopping heavily. Just these ones, like right here.
Just as Ro hopped onto the next tile, another razor-sharp scythe came lancing across and down in a flash, just barely missing her.
Whew. Oh, she kind of hops back a bit as it slices a bit of clothing. Learned something important here today.
Do you remember what tile you were stepping on that triggered the scythe?
Would it be acceptable to just grab one of those dead bodies and throw it on the pressure plates and see what activates? Nothing weighs closer to a body than a dead body.
That's a brilliant idea.
We have a nice supply of them back here.
Hold on, before you go, put a copper piece on the pressure plate that you stepped on.
Fair enough.
Nola May picks his fucking dead ass up and slowly carries his mutilated corpse through this hallway. All right. I gesture to Wolfrun that he should help me swing this thing so it lands on the cleaned plates.
Wolfrun smiles and obliges.
This time when the trap was triggered, a trap door gives way to a steep but abrupt slide. At its end was a wall of spikes which the body of the cultist was now skewered to. However, they were sharp and long enough to still pose a threat should anyone else fall in.
I look back at Ro and ask, how acrobatic are you? I know that I don't fancy my odds of jumping over anything.
She smirks and says, well, I could show you.
I'm a little shocked your solution isn't just to fill the pit with bodies and then walk.
That's a little morbid.
It's heavy. I didn't want to carry any more corpses.
I was making a joke to Nola May.
I think if our new friend watched us pile corpses, well, I don't know. She seems to have a bit of a fiery streak. Maybe she wouldn't mind.
She's a little off, isn't she?
Yeah.
She wasn't there when I was threatening to pop off Jorah's toes because he wouldn't tell me what I wanted to know.
You literally threatened to flay a man alive.
I literally threatened to flay a man alive if he wouldn't give up.
This is not beyond the pale for you.
I mean, I didn't actually do it. That's the point.
I'm not entirely unconvinced that you weren't prepared to.
Is it safe for the rest of us to kind of make our way down the corridor?
Yeah, just don't step on the tiles with the coins.
Much to the party's surprise, Saith seems to be in high spirits as she follows the party along. Rather than cowering behind our heroes and slowing them down, she playfully jumps over the trapped tiles and ducked under triggered blades. After the party gathered at the end of the hallway, they beheld another door which looked eerily similar to the haunting silvery door at the front of the temple. However, while it did have the strange leathery tendrils crisscrossing its circular frame, it lacked the terrifying face that the first had. Instead, there was an intricate circular design depicting death, drowning, burning, and darkness. At its center, two depressions stared back at the party in the exact shape of the keystone.
Perhaps we need a second keystone from the other corridor.
Perhaps. Well, on the plus side, this gives us time to find something to put over top those spikes to walk across that isn't corpses. Nola May, I'll open it, but I want you to check it first.
All right. Let's see what sort of probably fire-based trap this door likely has upon it. This corridor might have been developed by someone else, someone with a modicum of sense. We might be able to just open this door.
I get the impression that much of this compound was not made by those who dwell here now.
Upon an initial push, it seemed that the door was stuck. There didn't seem to be a locking mechanism in place, though.
Zaid, you have a shield. Would you mind taking my place?
Yeah, that sounds wise.
I will follow behind and make sure no one tries to sneak up on you. The door flies apart.
You hear a
Splinters.
snap, and to no one's surprise, a broom now severed it in half falls to the floor.
That may have been overkill.
And there is another tapestry depicting flames and the suffering of many people. This corridor has an ancient wooden kind of middle walkway, just like the meeting room.
Do I see any scrapes along the walls or strange marks, scorching or anything on the tiles? Yeah, we're good, everyone.
You sure you don't want me to bring this meat puppet?
I think it's pretty safe in here.
Just keep it in the back of your mind, though.
All right.
So let's follow each other's footsteps.
Do we want to examine that tapestry?
It's just another red corridor marking, isn't it?
Coulter's watching the lady's expression as we're walking through these various parts. He's looking for signs of recognition and apprehension.
She seems the most lost out of the party members. Being more afraid does not help either.
Coulter extends his hand palm upward, just nods to her and smiles reassuringly, and just says, "It will be okay. It will be fine."
She follows Coulter.
Okay.
Nolome, this artwork for a medieval tapestry seems a bit more abstract. Just focusing on suffering through burning, melting people, surprising people with fire, hell, that sort of thing. It's more like a flag than anything else.
Oh boy, I can't wait to meet the people that this is the banner for. Well, I went down the last corridor first. Who wants to play in the corridor of fire?
All right. Well, here it goes. And then she's like, well, I didn't notice anything. They wouldn't trap every corridor, would they? She kind of starts casually walking.
Coulter would like to cast light on an object.
While Coulter was preparing to cast his light spell, he noticed that Ro began dropping, and cast Featherfall just in the nick of time. Ro now drifted down safely and slowly.
Because I was preparing light, but then if I see them falling to a pit, I immediately cast Featherfall. I have that prepared. I was sitting here trying to summon up some light for them, and suddenly this pit opens, and Coulter's like, "Featherfall!"
So you don't take that damage, but you do land in this thing.
Oh, all right.
I like that. It actually made prepping one of the utility spells really worth it.
I'm all right. There's spikes down here, though.
Coulter's holding his chest like heart pound.
A moment goes by, and you see one end of a rope kind of flail up out of the hole, hopefully landing on the floor that you're on.
So Nolome grabs the end of the rope and gestures for Wolfra and Zaid to hold the end with me. Are you going to try and climb up, or are we pulling you up?
Ro's going to try and climb up. She's cocky enough.
Before you do anything, the spikes retract, as if automatically.
One moment before I start climbing up, I glance around, presumably a very dark space I'm in. Do I see anything of interest, anything that catches my eye other than, what this space is obviously intended for?
You see one wall made of a different kind of brick, and you see 3 different chains on the walls at different elevations.
Do I successfully climb up?
Athletics?
Uh-oh.
You do not.
There's a thump as I slip down the rope.
A rumbling from below was all the warning the party received before the walls to the small chamber that Ro was in began to close in on her. Okay, so as a group, this is how many actions it takes before the walls crush her.
Oh.
Thank God.
So we should probably
You
just
hear a
pull her up.
rumbling.
As soon as I hear the rumbling, I approach, I summon my magical energies, and I point at Ro, and I cast the levitate spell to assist her immediate ascent.
Her eyes are wide as you see her emerge from this hole. She looks at you, Coulter, and she says, "This is absolutely incredible. I'm amazed at what you're capable of."
It is not me, it is merely me channeling a greater power.
Ro, where are you from?
I am from Moorbridge.
You've never seen magic.
I've seen... DM, I don't know what extent you feel I've seen magic.
Magic, even in the Academy of Natural Philosophy, is rare. Coulter, for example, is the only person within the Academy with any ability. If there's a wizard in the entire peninsula, they'd be sought after. So magic is rare.
Okay.
At least to you guys, to the commoners.
And while you all don't know her backstory yet, she has lived a life that would not lend itself to witnessing magical acts.
So which door? Also,
Well-
Warfront probably just kind of told on himself by saying that.
What do you mean? He's used to magic and shit?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Zaid, you're a bit quiet. What's going through your mind right now?
It's mostly just wanting to ensure that there's no trace of the sound of pitter-patter of folk escaping behind them or any noise beyond into the next rooms. Just kind of keeping his footing about him, making sure he doesn't add to the party's troubles by falling himself.
It only takes people noticing Zaid is listening to something for them to notice someone screaming wildly from the first door on the left, and then the sounds of a hideous monster.
Well, we should go in there then.
Nolame tactically pretends like you didn't hear anything. Kind of steps out of Wolfrun's way so he can make his way to the door.
The screaming is so intense that you can't tell what sort of monstrous creature lies beyond that wall.
Whatever it is, we need to get in there now.
Quite. Zaid, would you accompany me towards the front of the door? Everyone prepared?
I draw my rapier.
So who opens the door?
Zaid probably should.
I shall open the door.
In this room, you see some sort of clerk or administrative individual behind a desk of stone next to a spade, protecting a lever and a doorway. It's a dimly lit room. A wild griffin has just broken from its restraints and is about to kill a cultist.
I assume that Runians would revere griffins?
You are unsure you've heard of anything like that.
Well, it's killing the cultists, so I'm happy about that. I'm going to ease my way in and then say in Riai, do you comprehend the language of the holy host of the skies?
What you see before you is a wild animal, that's to be sure. If it did understand you, it didn't show any signs of it. Though you have heard noble tales of griffins and dragons, seeing one in person is an entirely different experience.
I'll turn my head back and say, Wolfram, this might be something for your expertise.
Oh no, these won't listen to me.
Nolame puts away his rapier and pulls out the hand crossbow and starts to crank it back.
Rose wants to size up this cultist. What kind of gear is he wearing? How nice is that sword? Is he standing like somebody that is a skilled fighter?
He's younger than most of these swordsmen. Just by your eye, it seems like he's seen more days in hardship and in fear for battle than most normal men or peasants.
When the time is appropriate, Ro is going to charge him. In her mind, it's better that he receive a quick, clean death from her than be torn apart by this beast.
I am carefully avoiding this pit. I hear horrific, monstrous roars of a fabled beast. And I just wonder why they're going in there, and I stand motionless here, and I wait.
Watch and wait, smart move.
Watch and wait.
Which is also what Scythe is doing. Scythe? She has not proceeded further into the corridor since the first accident. Having narrowly evaded deadly traps and discovered what they needed to proceed deeper into the dungeon, the party continues from one dangerous sect of cultists into another. With chaos and unknown surprises behind every door, they've jumped from the frying pan into the fire.